Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Megaman X6. In the last part we continued on and took out a few more investigators, and now it's time for us to finally head back to Infinity Mijinion stage as Zero, so we can finally take out the investigator himself. And also I should mention, because he's going to mention it in his dialogue eventually, in case you're wondering what he's supposed to be, he's a water flea. Like I said last, I think it was in like part 1 or 2. Most of the dialogue and names in this game are transliterated from Japanese, so that's why some of them are a bit weird, like Metal Shark Player. Which, yeah, that's weird to us. Now that we're finally going through the entirety of Infinity Mijinion's stage, though, it's probably the most boring stage in the game because there's so little to do here. Most of it's just us avoiding Illumina, who, by the way, is very weak to Rainy Turtleoid's weapon. You can spam Rainy Turtleoid's weapon so well on the ground to start off with, but it just does so much damage to Illumina's cables. Honestly, this isn't a hard stage, but it's just boring, and honestly, it's probably one of the worst stages in the game because of that. Because there's a difference between fun and, bad. Because boring stages are the worst, whereas a bad stage you'll at least remember about things about. Though, I will eventually get very used to seeing this layout because the way to grind Nightmare Souls involves this stage. Which, well, great. Just great. Either way, let's get over to Mijinion himself. The stage is really short, too, as you can see. The investigator sent to this area is Infinity Mijinion. Stay sharp because he may have very powerful weapons. I won't lose. Again, because Zero has lost a few fights at this point. You know, I like that warning sign, but I really hate how long it can take in some games. X6, I think, is one of the worst with it, though. What the... That's a weird entrance there.
Weren't you dead?
You heard wrong. You're Infinity Mijinion, one of the investigators for the nightmares, aren't you?
Are the other investigators useless fleas? That's the only explanation as to why I have to clean up them messes. But wait, why are you here anyway? Don't tell me you destroyed my sweet Illumina!
What do you think?
Maverick! I haven't even tested her! And I was thinking that I'll destroy all the thick-headed so-called authorities with her. You will die!
Infinity Mijinion's a very annoying Maverick. In that he multiplies whenever you hit him, with his weakness or just in general. And the copies, they don't move, but they will attack. This fight is much more annoying as X because even though you have the range, you're hitting him a lot more often, meaning you're causing more copies. Needless to say, if you don't take care of the copies, a lot can go on in this fight because they're all spawning the bubbles. I think the most I've had is 5, which is ridiculous with how much is on screen at once. Zero's very good for this fight. Watch your HP because he can hurt a bit. And just make sure he doesn't get too crowded, honestly. The bubbles are probably the worst part of the fight just because not only do they have a lot of damage output, but there's just so many of them at times too. By the way, if I recall correctly, he is weak against Shield Sheldon's ability. Which, you know, it's not really an attack with Zero, so I'm kind of screwed there. With X, you can at least charge it up as a special weapon, and then you can do damage with that, but as Zero, not much we can do there. And with that, I believe we've also rescued all 16 Reploids within this stage. And we get the Ray Arrow. Hurt enemies on the same screen. How bland. If you really want to know what it does, though, and Zero gets something else. He gets the Rakuha from previous games, the R2 nuke attack where he sends things all over the screen. Infinity Mijinion, ex-test pilot for large weapons. He had a special body that could process at a high speed. He ignored the test program, choosing instead to go on his own schedule. He produced excellent results, but he always had trouble with the other staff. Even Gate was unable to control him. One day, he was disposed of by making it look like an accident. The Ray Arrow, what it does is that it gets shot forward, and when it hits a wall, it splits to both vertical directions. Either way, with Infinity Mijinion down, it's time for us to once again take the Helm's Phantom X, Falcon X, and take on Metal Shark Player, which, honestly, probably my favorite Maverick design in the game. I like the whole idea of a hammerhead shark. And this is probably my least favorite stage in the game, though. This is the recycle laboratory. Parts of disposed Mavericks are recycled here. All operations should be stopped now. How are things going? The bell conveyor stopped, but a large compressor is working. It must be working the nightmare. There is no signal. Be careful not to get caught in the compressor. And we have the right armor back, which, oh, that's foreboding. Let's read what Ailey had to say there. I found the right armor. Can I get by the compressor with this? You should be fine, but be careful. I'll try not to get scrapped. This is the only stage in the game that right armor appears in, by the way, if you only play X. But Metal Shark Player Stage is a giant case of crushophobia because let's say roughly 95% of the stage is under a giant crusher. X, piles of junk narrow the path. You'll be gone if you get squished by the compressor. I know, I'll be careful. Thankfully, the compressor will get stopped by the right armor. However, you notice that space to my right? You could duck in that. However, the compressor has one very glaring issue with programming. If you're underneath it and you're ducking to not get crushed by it and you let go of the down button to stop ducking, you die immediately. Because X will automatically unduck, even though in a case like that in other games, they would just stay ducked automatically because it would kill you, because, you know, player friendliness. But no! It's one of those cases where, nah, we don't like you, you're gonna die anyway. Thankfully, most of the time there's usually a space where you can stand and you don't have to worry about getting crushed, but there are times where you will get crushed if you aren't. That was bad grammar at the end there. Duck here, otherwise you die. Do not test it, you will die. That's one of the, actually, that right there, that block in front of me is one of the nightmare effects. That is the ground scaravenge nightmare effect. In terms of what that does overall, it creates 4 of those kinds of cubes. Red, brown, black, and purple. Red and brown can be destroyed with the ground dash ability of ground scaravenge. The black and purple ones will only get pushed by them. The red one in particular will cause an explosion that will really damage you, though, when you destroy it, so watch out. The purple ones will slide a bit. No, will slide quite a bit, whereas the black ones will only move just a tad when you hit them with the ground dash, though. This is also probably one of the most annoying stages in terms of enemy placement, because there's a lot of Reploids in places where if you're rushing ahead, the nightmares will get ample opportunity to infect. So you're going to need to be present at a bit of a slower pace to begin with. But there's also one particular nightmare that is in the worst goddamn position I've ever seen. We'll see him in 2 minutes, roughly. Thankfully, this is a pretty good stage to get some Nightmare Souls in. Also, yeah, don't watch out for this Reploid, because otherwise he will get infected. Yet again, though, great music. In fact, one thing I should also give X6 a bit of credit for. While some things don't look as good as others, like the Crusher itself looks a bit too pop-outy from the rest of the stage, X6 is also a pretty damn good-looking game in terms of sprites. I think X4 and 5 look better, but this still has its graphical merits. Mind you, Capcom knows their 2D sprites. The animations are one thing, but the actual sprite quality is another. Because, Way Forward, they've obviously done games where the sprites aren't as, I'd say, detailed, but they're damn better animated. Which is actually a pretty decent comparison between the N64 and the PlayStation. The PlayStation games generally looked better outside of things like Resident Evil, where models would clip into themselves. But Nintendo 64 games were almost always better animated. Mostly because a lot of the games that really mattered were created in-house, therefore effort was put in. That nightmare has infected that Reploid for me so many times, it's ridiculous. This is probably my least favorite stage, though, not only just because of some really dumb enemy placement, but also because I don't like Crusher stages. Not only do they put me under such stress, but they also, if you die, you have to go through so much again. Also, that's dumb enemy placement. You should not place an enemy directly in your player's path or like that, in a place where they have no choice but to either know they're there ahead of time and shoot it, or just take a cheap hit. That is dumb! Maybe if the nightmare was higher up in the Crusher, I wouldn't mind so much, but good lord. Now belt conveyors are also moving. The nightmare should be doing this, but I can't see any changes here. We don't know what'll happen. Stay alert. Alright. And now we have a Crusher stage with conveyor belts. Great. Great. I really do not like this stage, though. It might not look too bad watching it, but let me tell you, playing it, especially when you have crushophobia like I do, is one of the worst things because you're constantly tense and it's... Ugh. It's not completely random like Ground Scarevich's stage. It's also not as high damage area laden as the last stage I'll be taking on, which is the magma area. But it's still damn annoying to me. Plus, for some reason, X and Zero control almost the exact same they did in X4 and 5, but I feel as if they're a bit more slippery here for some reason, particularly when it comes to wall clinging. Wait, you can't jump across spiny area. There's another one. What can we do? Well, we can use the Crusher to our advantage. That works. Though if you're playing as Zero, you could just plain double jump over that. Zero makes the game so much easier, but I'm making sure they both get a good amount of attention because I want them to have roughly equal health. I'm giving each one of them 4 of the 8 heart containers. Heart tanks, rather. Now, one thing I suppose I should start going over soon, maybe right now even, is the parts that we've got, the parts from Reploids you should have gotten that I recommend out of all the ones from the previous few stages. Not counting the things that permanently boost both party members' HP and weapon energy. Near the sub-tank in Commander Yammark, there's a limited part known as Life Recover, which is basically a free sub-tank. There's also the Super Recover, which I think increases the amount of HP you get from item things. One I got definitely for a fact was the Rapid 5, which I think just increases... It's an X-exclusive part that I think increases his fire rate. In Ground Scarevich's stage, the most important one for me is Speedster, which I don't think I got, but you can get through the random pathways, which increases your speed and thus your jumping distance, which is damn near essential in later parts of the game, by the way. Also, there's the heart tank. Over in Rainy Turtleoid stage... actually, is there anything good in Turtleoid stage? I think the Weapon Recover one is there, which is basically like the free sub-tank one earlier, except it's free weapons tank. There's also Hyper Dash, which makes you dash farther, faster. I think you're also briefly invulnerable during it, too. But first, time for a mini-boss. Meet Nightmare Pressure. This guy sucks. He only has like 3 attacks. But the thing you need to damage are the purple cannons there. The Falcon's Giga Attack with the R2 is very good for that, as you can see. However, the thing that sucks about this fight is the grenades he can drop can interfere during another one of his attacks where he'll crush himself down to try and crush you. If you get hit during duck animation, you're forced back into standing, and that will kill you instantly. The spikes on the sides are not instant kill, though. Over in the Laser Institute, actually, is there anything in the Laser Institute of worth? I'm trying to remember. I think the Energy Saber is there, which, like, halves what the amount you use with special weapons. And the Damage Barrier, which I think increases your invincibility frames. So those are in areas I didn't go to yet in the Laser Institute. Over in the Weapon Center, I've already got them all. There's the Damage Converter, which I think converts damage to weapon energy. Speed Shot, which increases projectile rate, I think. I think that's about it. That's all the stage we've been to so far, except for this stage. In this stage, stuff you should try and find, even though you might not be able to, depending on your Nightmare effect, because some blocks are blocking away earlier. The Shock Buffer is here, which is really good. That, I think, doubles defense and halves invincibility frame time. I think. That sounds about right. I think that's in an area where the alternate pathway is, though, so you need to go out of your way for that. But it's worth it, let me tell you. I am getting every Reploid, as I mentioned earlier. In fact, I can confirm for a fact that all 128 are with me at the end of the game. But you do have to make multiple visits in a lot of cases because of alternate pathways, randomness, so on and so forth. Either way, time for Metal Shark player. I got a strong energy signal. It must be an investigator. The investigator here is Metal Shark player. Stay on guard. Alright then. And Metal Shark player is actually a pretty interesting boss fight. Why? Well, to preload it, remember Phoenix Magnian from 02? Think something similar to that. Plus, he's a hammerhead shark, and that's just awesome. You! What are you up to? Instead of investigating the nightmare, you're manipulating it! It's strange that you're not affected by the nightmare. You have excellent DNA. Don't you? I'd like to analyze your DNA once. You must be Metal Shark player, right? It doesn't matter. I'll get your DNA. Metal Shark player, first off, he's weak to Rainy Turtleoid's ability, I believe, which is the Hydra Meteor. He fires his anchors out, which bounce all over the room, which is kind of annoying. He likes to do that little dash attack where the debris hurts you. But his most interesting attack is that he can bring former Mavericks back from the dead for an attack. Similarly to Phoenix Magnion with all of Zero's enemies in Zero 2. Once he's below half health, he can summon Sting Chameleon, Magna Centipede, or Blast Hornet from the dead to help him. None of their attacks are very damaging or very interesting to watch, honestly, aside from the main animation. But it's cool, and it also presents a narrative issue. Why didn't they just have Metal Shark Player bring Zero back from the dead? It would have made so much more sense. Because think about it, not only is Metal Shark Player one of Gates' investigators, that means he also works for Isoc, and Isoc wants to find Zero, so it would just make sense. Come on, guys. Plus, they could have also brought back Iris, but mind you, who wants Iris back? Besides Zero, obviously. Either way, Metal Shark Player, not a very bad boss, honestly, but his stage just takes any fun I have with him out of it. Very easy, predictable attacks for the most part. Not too bad. X6 on the whole, honestly, now that I think about it, is a pretty decent case of very hard stages, decently easy bosses. Aside from maybe Infinity Mijinion, depending on how you're playing him. 12 minutes on a stage. God damn. But we get the metal anchor, which is an anchor that just bounces all over the ground. Zero gets the Raku Kojin, though, where you press attack and down to midair. It's basically the downward stab as it was in previous games. It'll also cause the anchors to drop out after using it when you land on the floor. Metal Shark Player, an ex-investigator recycle team. He studied recycling in order to create a new replate from parts of disposed Mavericks. His most important work was to analyze and control DNA data of the Mavericks. His analysis ability was so great that he succeeded in resurrecting dead Mavericks. Since DNA resurrection is explicitly prohibited, the law instantly dealt with him. Gate was also interested in DNA resurrection, so he encouraged him to collect DNA instead of stopping him. Metal Shark would have continued if Gate had stopped him. Wait, what? That line didn't make sense at all. What? Metal Shark would have stopped if Gate had stopped him. What? Would have continued if Gate had stopped him. That is just weird. Either way, with that really dumb grammar, I'm going to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 5, we'll be going after a few more investigators and also just doing the usual stuff meanwhile. See you guys then.